Hey there, Exiles. How's it going? Zot here, and today I'd like to do a little bit of a deep dive into a build I've been playing recently, one that is just really fun, brings together a lot of funky mechanics, and abuses some of the most powerful interactions we have in the game right now. So this is the Warcry, Sploder, Autobomber, Poison, Looper, Pathfinder build. So one thing I like about this is if you have never tried a loop build in PoE, most commonly those like the ward loop or there's like the zombie looper, stuff like that. Mechanics where you sort of trigger a loop within the game that sustains itself, and you use that to trigger skills, damage, etc. What's fun about this one is it's not as involved. With Ward Loop, you need very specific items, you need very specific cooldown breakpoints, you kind of have to worry about all these things. But with this, it's relatively simple. You use Scold's Bridle to damage yourself every time you spend mana. You use the Enduring Composure cluster notable to give yourself an endurance charge if you've been hit recently. Replica Fragility to eat those charges every second, and then the Eternal Apple Shield, which triggers the socketed Warcries every time you lose an endurance charge. So every time you spend mana, you're gaining a charge, losing a charge, and then triggering a Warcry. The um, you want to get that as close to 3-second cooldown as possible. That way, they're always going off in order when you have charges. Thankfully, that's really simple. All you need to use is the inherent cooldown on the Eternal Apple Shield, get 23% quality gems, and then use the Impossible Escape to get the Warcry nodes on the tree. This is great because you get massive overlapping damage from the new Corpses Explode when you Warcry charms. You get massive amounts of regen and armor from your Warcries, and it's kind of a hands-free playstyle. You don't have to click, you don't have to aim, you don't really have to do anything. You kind of just run into packs, stand there, and everything explodes. So for damage, we use these new charms that explode nearby corpses whenever we Warcry. We stack 3 and a jewel for 20% corpse life as base fizz damage. We then scale 144% of that fizz damage as extra chaos using obliteration, mings, and some cluster notables. We have to get 100% chance to global poison. This can be tricky. You're generally getting that with the help of Eldritch Implicit Gloves, and getting over 20% can start to get pricey. So if you're just starting off the build, you may have to use different unique rings, like a Circle of Agony for poison or Herald of Agony effect, or the slipping my mind right now, the chill when you're poisoned ring, or you could even use the Curse Mastery for extra 20% chance against cursed targets. Then, since we're applying such large percent health based poisons, we can really abuse low tolerance and Alchemist's Mark, because each poison is going to be just so big. Prolifing that with low tolerance and then dropping on the ground with Alchemists makes for a non significant amount of damage. And then what's great, because you're triggering all these corpses and exploding what's nearby you, this is all going to be overlapping and stacking for huge amounts of damage. So in terms of corpse generation, we have a couple different engines here. Primarily, we have the double cast when stun setup for Desecrate and Unearth. This makes it so every time we get hit, or almost every time we get hit, we will trigger these spells, throw corpses on the ground, and then within 1 second, our Warcry will trigger, blowing all of them up for massive damage. Unearth is great because you can scale levels and quality for more corpse life. Definitely recommend getting a +1 socketed gems lightning coil and putting that link set up there. But if you feel like you want a little bit more control for your damage, you can just take out cast when stunned, put in faster casting or pinpoint, however you want to do it, and then you'll be able to self-cast and have a little bit more control and consistent damage output. Personally, I'm using the Corpse Walker boots. This kind of automates the whole process. They drop corpses behind you as you run, so you don't have to worry about pressing any buttons or getting hit. You can just run through packs. At least 1 or 2 corpses will explode with low tolerance and all that. That's enough to start the chain, and then everything just starts exploding all around you. So for defense, we're running the pretty stock standard Pathfinder plus Mage Blood Flask Abuse. Then shifting 56% of our fizz taken to Elemental with Lightning Coil and a Shield Corrupt. We have some armor on the build. Armor actually gets more effective the lower the fizz hit is, so by converting half of our fizz hits to elemental, we're dramatically increasing the effectiveness of the armor that we do have. Build also benefits from percent damage reduction. This can come from either endurance charges, relication boots, shield corrupts, that sort of thing. Then the classic Defiance of Destiny, so you recover life or missing life if you would be hit. So it's just really beneficial for standing in really dense packs, getting hit dozens, if not hundreds of times a second, and that just really helps keep you alive. We use Storm Shroud paired with a Flask mod to give us full elemental ailment immunity. And then we have a bleed, or unaffected by bleed rather, Watcher's Eye, which makes us effectively immune to the most dangerous things to us. I managed to get a couple jewel corruptions, so my poisons on me have 50% reduced duration, so they'll just fall off very quickly, and my sustain is enough to keep me alive through that. In terms of recovery, the build runs 40% total recoup, that's with nodes on the tree and one ring craft. You're using Blood Notch, since we're doing the typical stun setup. Every time you get hit, you recover basically half of the damage instantly, and then the rest, for the most part, is recouped and then pushed out over time with Progenesis. We run a good amount of life regen on this build. We have around 500 to 600 base regen between the flasks and Consecrated Ground. I do have one charm mod that makes Consecrated Ground sticky, so I have almost 100% uptime there. But then we do also get an insane amount of regen from our Warcry, so I'll go over that next. But in terms of sustaining costs, you of course have the 25% reduced cost on Flask mod, and then one reduced flat on rings, so you want to get everything as low as possible. My Warcries each cost 1 mana, all my other skills cost less than 10. And this is just mainly because I don't like running life tap, because it's basically a dead link, and this build is very socket starved. So there are some instances where you can run out of mana, but for the most part, it's a non-issue. And then kind of the unsung heroes of this build, everyone kind of focuses in on the damage, but Warcries give you a pretty insane amount of utility. So with Enduring Cry, every 3 seconds you get 3k regen, that's basically your full life, just zoop, goes back up. Ancestral Cry gives you 1500-ish armor on average, that's really great. Then Infernal Cry covers enemies in ash, which is a slow, and then they will also explode if they're debuffed. The fire explodes don't really do anything for us, but it's an extra, 5 or 10% life explosion stacked on top of all of our other explosions, so it's just the flat damage is just very beneficial for clear. So let's take a look at my character now. You can see I'm just looping here in the background. Each of my Warcries has just under a 3-second cooldown time, so every time the endurance charge comes up from enduring composure, it's immediately triggered by the Warcry, and we have this just safe, consistent damage. So we can see here for the Corpse Walk, as I'm running around, corpses are dropping and they're exploding. That's the sort of hands-free auto-bomber style of the build. If you want to do more dense maps, you really want to maximize kind of both damage and utility, you can switch to something like Ralikesh. This will give you a big chunk of fizz reduction, 12% more damage, more attack speed, more cast speed, etc. And then you can either just fully rely on the cast when stun setup, which is fine, or like I said, you can just take this out and self-cast your Unearth for consistent controlled overlaps. Now, you're going to want to get stuff like this, the cost reduction. It's really important to have this corruption here, so you only need to run one small cluster and then one aura cluster to fit all of your auras. Chaos large clusters are really good. If you can get Grim Oath, Wicked Paul, and Touch of Cruelty, this puts the 2 good nodes up in the front, and you just get Fizz as extra, and then Chaos and Duration. That's really beneficial. Keeps like your Warcry buffs up longer. The build doesn't have that much health, but it has so many layers of mitigation and recovery It's very easy to stay in the juiciest maps and not have to worry too much about dying. So these are the charms you want to get. I'm going for life regeneration rate and then uh, effects of consecrated ground linger, because I also have this mod on my Witch Was Taken, so my consecrated ground also turns into a debuff as well as a recovery buff for me. So overall, this is just a really fun build. If you're curious to see mapping, I'm going to be posting some longer form videos as well as streaming, and I do have a demo video I recorded earlier this week. So if you have any questions or insights about the build, maybe you're playing it, doing something differently, please comment down below, let me know. And yeah, thanks for watching. Like, subscribe, all that good stuff. See everybody next time.